Long before phones or cars, and long before the rise of the great empires of the West, China was already very old. This is the story of China, perhaps the oldest story on Earth that never stopped moving, a continuous thread of culture and history stretching back through the mists of time. It is a tale of dragons and floods, of emperors and walls, and of a people whose resilience has shaped the world we live in today. Our story starts not with facts found in a textbook, but with a legend that explains the very soul of the land. Long ago, before the first word was ever written, the Chinese told stories of how the world began. They spoke of two spirits named Nua and Fuxi, who lived when the earth was still new. People said they were half human and half dragon, representing the balance of the universe. One day, feeling lonely in the vast silence of the world, Nua picked up yellow clay from the banks of the river. With careful hands, she shaped the clay into tiny people, and as she breathed life into them, they began to dance and talk. These were the first humans, and they settled in the fertile valley of a great winding river known as the Yellow River, or the Huanghe. The Yellow River was both a blessing and a curse. It provided rich soil for farming, but it was also prone to violent, unpredictable floods that could wipe out entire villages in a single night. In these earliest days, kind and wise rulers watched over the land, remembered by history as the 5 emperors. But even their wisdom could not stop the water. When the great floods struck, homes were washed away and fields were turned into lakes. A brave man named Yu stepped in to help where others had failed, unlike those before him who tried to block the water with dams. Yu spent 13 long years digging a massive network of canals to guide the floodwaters back to the sea. Legend says he was so dedicated to his task that he passed by his own home 3 times during those years, but never once went inside, fearing it would distract him from his work. His selflessness saved the people, and in gratitude, they made him their king. Yu started China's first royal family, the Xia dynasty. While most historians once thought the Xia was purely a legend, modern archaeology suggests that an ancient, organized society really did fight the floods of the Yellow River nearly 4,000 years ago, marking the true birth of Chinese civilization. The first Chinese rulers we can prove were real through physical evidence are the Shang. We know about them because of their deep connection to the spirit world and their mastery of bronze. The Shang kings believed they could speak to their ancestors to predict the future. They did this using oracle bones, animal bones, and turtle shells that were heated until they cracked. A diviner would then read the patterns in the cracks to answer questions about war, crops, or the weather. To record these answers, they carved symbols onto the bones. These early symbols were the ancestors of the Chinese characters used today, making Chinese writing one of the oldest living scripts in the world. The Shang era was a time of great warriors and grand tombs where bronze chariots and exquisite jade jewelry were buried with the dead. But as the centuries passed, the Shang kings grew cruel and neglected their duties. In 1046 BC, a new group called the Zhou rose up from the west. In a climactic battle at Muye, the Zhou defeated the last Shang king. To justify their takeover, the Zhou introduced a powerful idea called the Mandate of Heaven. They taught that the gods gave the right to rule only to those who were virtuous. If a king became corrupt or ignored his people, the mandate would be taken away and given to someone else. The Zhou dynasty would rule longer than any other in China's history, lasting almost 800 years. During this time, the empire grew, and the Zhou kings shared their power with local lords who ruled their own small territories. This worked well for a time, but eventually the central power of the king began to fade. Local lords became more interested in their own wealth and power than in loyalty to the crown. One king, named Yu, famously broke the trust of his people when he lit the emergency signal fires just to make his mistress laugh. When real invaders arrived, his lords ignored the signals, and the king was driven from his throne. This collapse led to a long period of chaos known as the Spring and Autumn period, which eventually spiraled into the Warring States period. For over 200 years, 7 major kingdoms fought a brutal, endless war for control. Yet, in the midst of this violence, Chinese philosophy flourished. A teacher named Confucius traveled from court to court, teaching that society could be saved if people returned to values of respect, family loyalty, and kindness. At the same time, another thinker named Laozi taught the way of the Tao, encouraging people to live in harmony with nature. These ideas became the bedrock of Chinese thought, proving that even in times of great darkness, the human mind can find light. The era of many kings ended in 221 BC, when one ruler finally conquered all others. His name was Yingzheng, the king of the state of Qin. He was a man of immense ambition who took the title Qin Shi Huang, meaning the first emperor of China. It is from the name Qin that the world eventually got the name China. Qin Shi Huang was a visionary but also a tyrant. He realized that to keep his new empire together, everything had to be the same. He standardized the writing system, the weights and measures, and even the width of cart axles so that they would fit the same ruts in the roads. To protect his borders from northern nomads, he ordered the connection of various local walls into one massive barrier, the first version of the Great Wall. However, his rule was harsh. He enforced a philosophy called legalism, which demanded total obedience to the law. Those who disagreed were punished, and many books were burned to prevent people from thinking for themselves. Obsessed with living forever, the emperor spent his final years searching for a magic potion of immortality. Ironically, the potions he drank, which often contained mercury, likely poisoned him. He was buried in a massive underground palace guarded by thousands of life-sized terracotta soldiers, a silent army that remained hidden for 2,000 years until a farmer accidentally discovered them in 1974. When the first emperor died, his empire quickly fell apart, but it was soon replaced by the Han dynasty, founded by a commoner named Liu Bang. The Han era is considered a golden age, so important that most Chinese people today still call themselves the Han people. During this time, the harsh laws of the Qin were softened, and the teachings of Confucius became the official guide for the government. The Han were great inventors. They created the first real paper, the magnetic compass, and even early seismographs to detect earthquakes. They also looked outward. Han armies pushed the borders far into Central Asia, and a brave explorer named Zhang Qian traveled west, discovering new lands and peoples. This led to the creation of the Silk Road, a network of trade routes that connected China to the Roman Empire. Silk and spices flowed west, while gold, glassware, and a new religion called Buddhism flowed into China. For 400 years, the Han thrived, but eventually, internal corruption and a series of weak child emperors led to its collapse. The empire split into the famous 3 kingdoms of Wei, Shu, and Wu. This period of romanticized warfare and legendary heroes like Cao Cao and Liu Bei became the subject of China's greatest literature and folklore. After centuries of being broken into pieces, China was reunified by the Sui dynasty in 589 CE. Though the Sui lasted only a short time, they left a monumental legacy, the Grand Canal. This man-made river stretched over 1,000 miles, connecting the wheat growing north with the rice growing south, ensuring that the empire could feed itself and move goods easily. This foundation paved the way for the Tang dynasty, often called the most glorious period in Chinese history. The Tang capital, Chengyan, was the largest and most cosmopolitan city in the world. Filled with merchants from across Asia and Europe, it was an age of great poetry, led by figures like Li Bai and Du Fu, and an age of social progress. The Tang produced the only woman in history to rule China in her own name, Empress Wu Zetian, who was a capable and strong leader. This was followed by the Song dynasty, a time of incredible scientific advancement. The Song were the first to use paper money and gunpowder in warfare. They perfected the art of porcelain and built great ships with watertight compartments. But despite their wealth and culture, the Song were constantly threatened by nomadic groups from the north. The greatest of these threats came from the Mongolian steppes. A leader named Genghis Khan had united the Mongol tribes into the most powerful cavalry the world had ever seen. His grandson Kublai Khan eventually completed the conquest of China, establishing the Yuan dynasty. For the first time, all of China was ruled by foreigners. Under the Mongols, China became part of a massive empire that stretched all the way to Eastern Europe. Marco Polo, a traveler from Venice, visited the court of Kublai Khan and returned to Europe with stories of a land so advanced and wealthy that many people didn't believe him. But Mongol rule did not last long. Natural disasters and heavy taxes led to a peasant uprising. A man named Zhu Yuanzhang, who had once been a penniless monk, led the rebellion that drove the Mongols out. He became the first emperor of the Ming dynasty. The Ming were determined to restore Chinese traditions. They built the Forbidden City, a massive palace complex in Beijing that served as the home of the emperors for 500 years. They also sent a great admiral named Zheng He on 7 voyages across the Indian Ocean with hundreds of treasure ships much larger than anything in Europe. However, after Zheng He's death, the Ming turned inward, stopping the voyages and focusing on the Great Wall, which they rebuilt into the stone and brick masterpiece we see today. The final chapter of Imperial China began when a people called the Manchu from the north invaded and established the Qing dynasty. The Qing were initially very successful, expanding China to its greatest size, including Tibet, Mongolia, and Taiwan. But the 19th century brought new and dangerous challenges. European powers, led by Great Britain, wanted more trade with China. When the Qing refused to open their ports, British merchants began smuggling opium into the country. This led to the Opium Wars, which China lost due to the superior technology of the British Navy. China was forced to sign unequal treaties, giving away land like Hong Kong and allowing foreigners to operate outside Chinese law. This century of humiliation caused massive internal unrest. The Taiping Rebellion, a civil war led by a man who believed he was the brother of Jesus, resulted in the deaths of over 20 million people. The Qing tried to modernize, but it was too little, too late. A group of rebels known as the Boxers tried to drive out foreigners by force, but they were defeated by an alliance of 8 nations. Finally, in 1912, a revolution led by Sun Yat-sen brought an end to the Qing dynasty and the 2,000-year-old system of emperors. The new Republic of China struggled from the start. The country fell into the hands of local warlords who fought for control. While a new political movement, the Communist Party, began to grow among the peasants and workers. A general named Chiang Kai-shek took over the nationalist government and tried to unite the country. But he soon turned his guns on the communists. This sparked a long and bloody civil war. During this time, a leader named Mao Zedong rose to power within the Communist Party. In 1934, When the nationalists surrounded them, Mao led his followers on the Long March, a 6,000-mile retreat through some of the world's most difficult terrain. While the two sides fought each other, an even greater threat emerged: Imperial Japan. In 1937, Japan launched a full-scale invasion of China. The horrors of this war, including the massacre in Nanjing, left scars that have never fully healed. Millions of Chinese people died, but the invasion forced the nationalists and communists into an uneasy alliance to defend their homeland. When World War II ended with Japan's defeat in 1945, the Civil War in China resumed almost immediately. In 1949, the Communists emerged victorious, and Mao Zedong stood atop the Gate of Heavenly Peace in Beijing to announce the birth of the People's Republic of China. The nationalist government fled to the island of Taiwan, where they remain today. Mao's rule transformed China, but it was a time of great upheaval. Campaigns like the Great Leap Forward, intended to modernize the economy overnight, led to a catastrophic famine. The Cultural Revolution, aimed at purging old ideas, caused years of social chaos and the destruction of countless historical artifacts. Despite this, Mao is still seen by many as the father of modern China for unifying the country and improving healthcare and literacy. After Mao's death in 1976, a new leader named Deng Xiaoping took a different path. He began the reform and opening up policy, allowing elements of a market economy and welcoming foreign investment. This sparked the fastest economic growth in human history. In just a few decades, China transformed from a poor agrarian nation into a global superpower. Its cities, once filled with bicycles, are now dominated by high-speed trains and towering skyscrapers. Today, China is a leader in technology, green energy, and global trade, yet it still grapples with the tension between its ancient traditions and its modern ambitions. From the clay people of Noah's legend to the engineers of today's space program, China's story is one of constant reinvention. It is a story of a people who have seen empires rise and fall, who have survived floods and wars, and who have always found a way to rebuild. As the sun rises over the Great Wall today, it shines on a nation that is both very new and incredibly old. The story of China, the longest story on Earth that never stopped, continues to unfold, and its next chapter will undoubtedly shape the future of the entire world.